Okay, we're under the topical heading, Britain faced the entire world of Arab and Muslim nations, her Palestinian policy. So far, the Arabs are winning because they have no compulsion against violence. That was the only answer. They had no reason or rationale. They would say one thing and then turn around and start killing Jews. In September, in Damascus, 400 Arabs representing all the Arab states as well as Palestine itself resolved that Palestine was an integral party of the Arabian homeland. Really? They decided to change how people operate within their own national borders and insisted that Britain had to choose between our friendship and the Jews. Really? And by the end of the year, violence had broken out again. That's their answer. Threat to violence and then follow through on it. So British troops began an intensive military campaign against Arab terrorists. So the stage was clearly set for a radical change in British policy because the Britons couldn't be at war with the whole world. So we'll get down to the last paragraph here. What possible chance had the hopes of Palestinian Jewry or the needs of European Jewry against such arguments, in which the possibility of the Jews being masters of their own destiny was pitted against Britain's strategic aims from the Suez Canal to the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb, and against Britain's future relations with four separate existing Arab sovereign states, including two, Iraq and Saudi Arabia, whose oil was already referred to in the documents as a vital British need. There you go. Jewish hopes and British appeasement, 1938. From the beginning of 1938, British policy focused increasingly on the very solution which the Jews feared most, the fixing of permanent minority status on Palestinian Jewry by means of a severe cutback and eventual ban on Jewish immigration. The pressures which had come from India Muslims in 1937 continued in 1938. What has India got to do with Jews in Palestine? Everything. In Palestine, the Jews had been confronted since the beginning of 1938 with an increase in Arab violence, including the murder of Jewish farmers and sniping at Jewish buses and trucks. Yeah, it's okay to... Yeah, there's a bus that got some Jews in it. Let's just shoot the windows out with our bullets. Maybe we'll hit somebody. For the Jews of Europe, already the victims of hatreds beyond their control, March 1938 saw further deterioration in their hopes of a normal life, for on March 15th, Hitler entered Vienna, and direct Nazi rule was at once extended to Austria. Leopold Emery wrote to Malcolm MacDonald, the new colonial secretary, on 30 May 1938. There is no real comparison between the quite natural resentment of the Arabs, quite natural, at seeing the character of their country changed, though with material advantage to themselves. They didn't like the advantage of prosperity in the Palestinian area, which the Jews were solely responsible for bringing, and to benefit everyone there. They didn't like that. And the agony of the Jews of Central Europe, for whom there was no serious alternative city of refuge. So the situation of the Jews was becoming desperate. In Germany and Austria, their 1,000-year-old communities were rapidly being destroyed. Poland and Romania, anti-Semitism had again become open, vociferous, and violent. Throughout Europe, the possibility of Nazi rule, of pro-Nazi regimes, encouraged and stimulated anti-Jewish feelings. Want to have a better government? Kill some Jews. Really? In the Soviet Union, any attempt to express a specifically Jewish culture was suppressed, and all Zionist activity stamped out. Indeed, several 100,000 of the more active Jewish citizens, including all the Jewish Bolshevik leaders who had roused British hostility in the 1920s, had been wiped out in the Stalinist purges. Just killed. We don't want them around. Just kill them. Then at their height. In Palestine, Arab attacks on Jews continued with terrible effect. Above all, the continuing restrictions on Jewish immigration from Europe were a constant source of distress for all Palestinian Jewry. MacDonald warned of the danger of any policy that might arouse hostility amongst Muslims in India. Really? At a time when Britain was trying to evolve a scheme of federation in which Hindus and Muslims would both participate. Above all, MacDonald argued the Arab rebellion in Palestine tied down considerable armed forces thus immobilizing them for actions anywhere else. On July 6th, an international conference opened in France at the town of Evian. The United States' decision to maintain its strict quotas served as a guideline for other states. Only the Dutch, the Danes, and the Republic of Santo Domingo agreed to let in refugees without restriction. A resolution was passed which stated that the countries of asylum, such as they were, are not willing to undertake any obligation toward financing involuntary emigration. Since February 1938, with the resignation of Anthony Eden and his replacement by Lord Halifax as Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, the policy of appeasement of the Arabs had been actively pursued. During the summer of 1938, the British government moved steadily away from partition. In Palestine itself, the violence continued. The report of the government of Palestine, 1937, noted that since 1922, the Arab population increased by 261,000 compared with the Jewish increase of 245,000. So the Arab population, by both its own immigration and a higher birth rate, had grown by a larger absolute number than the Jewish population. The report also referred to those Arabs who were dispossessed of their land as a result of Jewish land purchase, noting that for the whole of 1937, only 6 Arab families had claimed to have been dispossessed. Only 6. And then they purchased the properties, and that each had then been settled on government land as compensation, so they had places to go. On August 12th, in a secret note to his cabinet colleagues, enclosing transcripts of his London and Jerusalem conversations, MacDonald noted, "Great harm had already been done in Palestine by rumors that the wisdom of partition had been questioned in the cabinet, which had encouraged the Arab terrorists and those behind them to believe that if only they persist in their campaign, they will force us to abandon this policy." And that was true. Kill people, and we'll stop being fair. The extremists were so powerful, MacDonald added, that they virtually dictate Arab policy. Go out and you want to change policy? Go out and get automatic weapons. As 1938 progressed, more and more boats, many of them organized by the revisionists, brought Jews from Poland, Germany, and Central Europe across the Black Sea through the agency and on to Palestine. Despite all that, they kept bringing in more Jews. These illegal immigrants were determined not to remain in Europe, where their future was clearly bleak. The British government responded to this traffic by putting pressure on all the governments between Poland and Palestine not to allow the refugees or the ships to pass. Wow, to let them just drown at sea. Unprovoked and savage Arab attacks on Jewish civilian settlements continued unabated. So, Britain forced to say, well, we got problems in Europe. Well, why we bother with these people here? Between 1933 and 1939, more than 65,000 German and Austrian Jews, including many doctors, lawyers, and other professional men, found asylum in Britain. But tens of thousands more were refused permission to enter, and those who were able to gain entry into Palestine were an even smaller portion of those who sought to enter. At the end of September 1938, the British government put pressure on Czechoslovakia to accede to Hitler's demands. Wow, everybody's backing down. See, it's the gun that rules. Leopold Emery, writing, Britain's Palestine policy is a replica of a small scale of the European situation. Absence of policy and fear of irritating those who mean mischief in any case. Mischief? How about murder? Sir Alison Russell stated, it has been alleged that the Jews have acquired the best land in Palestine. It does not appear to me a fair statement. That much of the land now in possession of Jews has become the best land is a true statement because they improved it, and they paid money for it anyway. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain stated bluntly that as Palestine had become a pan-Arab question, any discussion of its future had to include not only the Arabs of Palestine, but also those whom he called the Arab princes from the neighboring Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, Transjordan, and the Yemen. So if somebody objects in Mexico what's going on in Texas, they have a legitimate beef. Really? It's none of their business. We're in America. In its conclusion, the Cabinet's Palestine Committee of October 24th decided that the proposals of the Peel Commission should be abandoned and that a public announcement should be made to the effect that setting up of independent Arab and Jewish states is impracticable. Yeah, we need, this murdering is going on, so it's impracticable. October 28, 1938, the German government began the deportation of all Polish-born Jews. Malcolm MacDonald, British cabinet. The British government had to choose between its commitments to the world of Jewry and its commitments to the world of Islam. There you go. In spite of the adversities which it was now suffering, the world of Jewry remained extremely influential. For example, there were said to be 3 million Jews in the United States. On the other hand, the British Empire itself was to be a very considerable extent a Muslim empire. Some 80 million of our fellow subjects in India were Muslims. From the defense point of view, it was literally out of the question that we should antagonize either the Muslims within the empire or the Arab kingdoms of the Near East. They had more to say so what went on in Britain than the Britons had on this issue. The violation of the pledge, January to June 1939. The crux of the new British policy in a secret cabinet memorandum on January 18th. As the MacDonald memorandum explained, we cannot accept the contention that all Jews as such have a right to enter Palestine. Wow. We cannot avoid an eventual clash. If we continue to carry out the Balfour Declaration, which they approved in the Parliament, between the forces of persecuted, desperate, brilliant, constructive Jewry in Palestine and the widespread pan-Arab movement, which is rallying to the defense of its weakest brethren, the Arabs of Palestine. Has anything changed? No. Arab detestation of the Jewish invasion into Palestine being what it is, it would be wholly wrong to suggest that this large Arab population should one day, in their own native land, against their own will, their will come under the rule of the newly arrived Jews. These paragraphs became the basis of the British government's policy. At the same time, attempts were made to seek the opinions of various colonial governors as to the possibility of at least some small Jewish immigration elsewhere, even to the Soviet Union. Send them back where they're being persecuted and killed. The Zionists adhered to that very Jewish right to enter Palestine, which was established in the Churchill White Paper of 1922. They have paperwork establishing their policies, and Britain is just backing down because of weapons being shot at Jews throughout the Palestinian area, even at buses going by. The government now made an attempt to persuade Weizmann to abandon all Jewish rights in Palestine. It was during the cabinet meeting of January 27 that Malcolm MacDonald reinterpreted the Churchill White Paper statement in 1922. How do you reinterpret it? Just read it. That the Jews were in Palestine as of right and not on sufferance, which referred only to those Jews who were already living in Palestine in 1922 and not to those who reached Palestine later or might do so in the future. Clearly, this was not the message of Churchill's White Paper. During February and March 1939, new decisions were made by the cabinet with regard to Palestine. Each of these decisions proved fatal to Palestine being kept open to refugees. The British government were taking active steps to check and, if possible, to halt the continuing flow of illegal Jewish immigrants fleeing from Central Europe to Palestine. But the Balfour Doctrine allowed for that. Neville Chamberlain declared that it was of immense importance from the point of view of strategy, to have the Muslim world with us, and he added, if we must offend one side, let us offend the Jews rather than the Arabs. Wow. He even states stuff like that. By the end of April 1939, Palestine, MacDonald, White Paper, violates the Balfour Doctrine and encourages Arabs to fight Jewish settlement all the more by violent means. Why don't they just send them arms? Which they probably did. By the end of April 1939, the Palestinian White Paper was finalized, imposing upon Palestine severe restrictions which would fix an upper limit of 100,000 on the number of Jewish immigrants to be admitted over the following 5 years, after which the Arabs would have an effective veto on any further Jewish immigration. Who put them into charge? Well, they are, yeah, because they shoot. MacDonald told his cabinet colleagues on May 1st, certain points have been inserted to meet Arab pressure, and which, perhaps, would have been omitted if the matter were looked on its strict merits. If we thought on its merits, we would not accept this. But when bullets are flying, we'll go along with it. The House of Commons debated the new White Paper, against which Leopold Amory spoke with much force, telling the House that the government's watchword had now become appease the Arabs, and to do so by breaking faith with the Jews. Amory went on. The MacDonald White Papers paper is a